Hey everyone. So you've already heard me talk about many times in the past how you just can't print your way out of debt or spend your way out of debt. Keynesian economics only works because governments and central banks are pulling forward the productivity and the economic activity, the prosperity of the unborn and future generations. That is how Keynesianism works. Spend now to stimulate the economy, worry about paying it back later. But as you know, when it comes to government, there has never been a point in time where those debts are actually ever paid off. There has never been any time. I'm almost 50 years old. I'll be 50 this November. And in my 50 years I've been alive, there's never been any time ever, not in that entire 50-year history, where governments paid off the debts and were in the black. Never, folks, ever. Now, there are times where deficits may decrease or not happen in a particular year. But all a deficit is spending beyond your means. The debts continue to incur every year, even in those years where the deficits aren't being increased. So debt, keep this in mind, debts are constantly and forever increasing under government. They're never paid off. It's constantly relying on the future productivity or the income of successive generations to pay for the malfeasance or the economic malpractice of generations in the past. That kind of economic enslavement is not only immoral, but should be downright illegal. But hey, when you're the government and you're the one that gets to write the rules, well, be damned with morality, and they'll be the ones that determines what's legal. Anyway, like I say, you've listened to me before in the past talk about these kind of things from an economic standpoint. But today I'm going to add in the voice of John Robson, contributor to the National Post, because I think he did a really good job articulating that message himself. Headline of the National Post, John Robson, you can't stimulate your way out of a pandemic-driven recession. If you want subsidies to help people make ends meet until the quarantines end, please be very clear. Are you suggesting governments take money from some people with enough and give it to others without? Or create it from thin air? Good question, right? Yeah, be honest, be upfront with the people. When you're saying, Trudeau, that you're going to bail out all these corporations or all these people, well, where are you getting that money from? Why don't you, at the very least, and those in the media, that's the thing, if Trudeau wants to and not answer the question directly, or should I say Chrystia Freeland, who's basically taken over and is in charge of this country now, or any of these MPs, if none of those people want to actually answer these questions, then the onus is on the people in the media, such as John Robson here. But you're not going to get this from people in the CBC or a lot of the other established parties in this country who are getting their own bailouts from big government. Gee, I wonder why they won't hold big government to account, right? Anyways, putting their own moral failures aside, for the people of this country to actually know what's going on and what this all means, it's vitally important that they're getting the kind of information that's being provided in this article or in this video. But as you know, that represents a very tiny minority in this country. You can help by sharing my videos or relaying this information yourself. Don't expect Canadians to change their habits and behaviors if they're not given the proper information to make better choices. This is being reported March 17th, 2020. When's the last time you were sick and someone said, borrow money and call me in the morning? Strangely, it was today. With the COVID-19 pandemic, everyone's telling governments to stimulate something called the economy through deficits and interest rate cuts, so we won't have less wealth just because people can't go to work and create it. Economic theory might not be top of mind, but how many games of solitaire can you play? So economics is divided into micro, the study of what real people actually do, and macro, the study of a mysterious purple dragon called GDP that hovers in the sky somewhere. Stop with the red jack on Black Queen and listen. There's no such thing as the economy apart from the sum of all the wealth individuals create, less what they use up. So you can't lose money on every sale and make it up on volume. And when many people are too sick to work or too quarantined, it doesn't cause a recession. It is a recession. Less total wealth is being created. As NBC News observed with some bafflement, if stores cut hours excessively, or if hourly employees such as shelf stockers or cashiers self-quarantine and don't show up for work, lines could grow, one retail consultant said. It's a good thing we got these experts or these consultants to let us know information that even grade school children should understand. Thank goodness for consultants, but here's the stinger. Unless government multiplies loaves and fishes or cures the sick, it cannot stimulate the economy in a pandemic. My colleague John Iveson just described a consensus across the political divide that the government needs to step forward. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney said Canada needs fiscal stimulus in the range of 1% of GDP or $20 billion. But if people aren't working due to disease, how does government piling up debt help? Or slashing interest rates so we can pile up debt? It might help cover the bills while you can't earn money, but since you're worse off and nobody's better off, how does it levitate the purple dragon? Take watching baseball on TV. Please, you may say, but some really like to and now can't. And what can a rate cut do? Beguile someone into borrowing vast sums to start another league? Ridiculous. Hence this stunned New York Times story. Trading was halted as U.S. stocks dropped 8% at the open, despite an extraordinary move by the Fed that failed to prevent more investor panic. Investors were confronted with weak economic readings out of both China and the United States. It's not panic, it's rational, because being sick is bad. If you want subsidies to help people make ends meet until the quarantines end, please be very clear. Are you suggesting governments take money from some people with enough and give it to others without? Or create it from thin air? Yeah, what kind of forced wealth or income redistribution are you really talking about, Trudeau? Are you talking about taking from people that are alive today? Or like I say, robbing or economically enslaving future successive generations? Inquiring minds want to know. Not that that coward would actually own up and admit to what he's doing. Now, he's a politician at the end of the day. He'd either avoid answering the question directly or say something so ridiculous or spew a bunch of political garble that no one understands or learns anything from. If the latter, why just $20 billion? Iveson said. It would have been preferable if the deficit were not nearly $30 billion before the crisis hit. But if deficits stimulate the economy, why isn't it good they're already big and growing? There's no micro argument for deficits. Sure, if the government borrows $1 and hands it to someone who spends it, a storekeeper and factory worker are stimulated into selling and making. But the person the government borrows it from necessarily does not spend the same dollar. So it immediately cancels out. Dang. Yeah, that inconvenience of economic reality, right? Ah, say the macro sages. Never mind tedious individuals with their bad breath and baggy clothes. Y equals C plus I plus G plus, in brackets, X minus M. A set of abstractions more real than reality. If G goes up, Y goes up, even if total individual productivity activity goes down. Abracadabra, see the purple dragon soar. Where did this fairy tale come from? Before the 1930s, only monetary cranks like William Jennings, free silver, Bryan, and social credit thought the government had magic power to create prosperity. But the experience of the New Deal and the impenetrable wizardry of John Maynard free money Keynes persuaded us deficit spending could stimulate this famous economy. Until the late 1970s taught us reckless borrowing was as dumb as it sounded. Undaunted, we flipped through the government's spellbook until we found free silver again. Monetary crankery became orthodoxy, except instead of pushing out money backed by silver, pushing it out backed by nothing would make us all rich. Look, if I gave passing strangers $500 bills from our Monopoly game, all that would happen is we couldn't play Monopoly. More Benjamins chasing left stuff doesn't make us rich. More stuff does. Period. The real value of many suspended activities might be smaller than macroeconomists think, especially government activities, and telecommuting may lessen the impact. But if we're not out brewing coffee and hammering nails, we're worse off. And last time I looked, it wasn't governments that cured the sick and fed multitudes from a basket of fish. What a great article by John Robson. John Robson, like I say, I've referenced this man's articles many times in the past, and I expect I'll be doing many more in the future. Because like I say, he's one of the very few people who contributes to a media outlet in this country who's actually willing to be honest and hold government to account. Thank goodness for the minority of voices such as John's or mine. Because absent people like us, most people will continue to be inundated and ill-informed by the rest of their thought leaders or opinion makers. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.